So we are in the nice, quiet week between Christmas and New Year's, and I'm driving in an old friend today. There will be a video about that coming up later. But first, I need to talk. Today's topic: enthusiasm, or lack thereof. I have been largely missing from my Fast Forward EV channel for the past 6 months, and the reason has largely been lack of enthusiasm for the mission because of all of the negative and downward and kind of backward things that have been happening the last 6 months in the EV space, especially in the United States. Become frustrated watching as the world moves on with electrification, and the United States fights tooth and nail to go backwards. And this isn't really the government. Obviously, the current administration, at any rate, is very much trying. But the screaming voices against it are loud, and though they are few, they are able to get a lot of press, and a lot of influence is being made negatively towards EVs. Pretty much ever since the NACS announcement by Ford, and then quickly by GM, there's just been one after another story about EVs are slowing down, people aren't buying them, they're quote-unquote stacking up on dealer lots. I love that. Like they're literally piling them up in layers. Instead of the fact, which is, there's 5 or 6 EVs on the dealer's lot now, instead of none. But, of course, that they're stacking up. The national average they were reporting of the number of days it took to sold an EV versus a gas car, where there was a gap between those two things. Well, sure. But we spent so long with no EVs available, and now they are available, and there's lots of reasons people aren't buying EVs or cars in general. But anytime an EV is on a lot for more than 4 minutes, that's just another story for EVs. Popularity is waned, or it's over. They would love to say it's over. And the headlines are very typically, EV sales are dropping, and then in a day later, we sold more EVs this year than any year previous. And it's just not. What's not changing, what's not going up, is the adoption rate. The percentage of EV sales versus gas sales is not increased as much as it did in previous 2 years. But we're still selling plenty of them. But the negative press just keeps coming at it. And one of the big things is the charging infrastructure. That people can't charge their cars, and that is true. We have about 10 times fewer fast chargers on the highways of the United States than we need to support the growth rate we're expecting to happen by 2030. And those chargers need to be there, because here at the end of 2023, as we head into 2024, it is less possible to travel long distances in an EV than it was in 2020. And that's because The number of cars has quadrupled. Number of EVs has quadrupled, if not more. But the number of chargers has stayed exactly the same, or lessened because of chargers being derated or out of service. I apologize for the rain, although it's not my fault. If it was my fault, I probably wouldn't be bothering doing podcasts. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop recording until this rain stops, assuming it does stop. Okay, the rain has stopped, so I think I can continue. Where was I? Yes, charging infrastructure. Stagnant. So that, I think, is preventing people from buying EVs. And the NACS announcement did not help that one little bit in the near term. I think people understand that before they get an EV, they have to be confident they can travel long distances in it. And they can't right now. But people assumed, I think, before the NACS announcements that it would get solved. CCS cars would be the thing everybody would have, and nobody thought about the disparity between the Teslas and everything else until Ford forced their hands. And I'm not against the NACS transition. I think it's a positive once we get through it, but the immediate result of it, I think, is Americans going, well, I'm just not buying an EV until they've got the ports situation sorted. So I think that really has put a damper on things, because it's certainly put a halt on any growth happening in the other networks, in the CCS networks, because, well, now they've all got to retrench and figure out how to support NACS by 2025, or else they're going to start becoming irrelevant. So they're grappling with that rather than expansion. So screw any more expansion in the next 18 months or so. And the buyers are like, I'm not buying a car with the wrong connector on it, adapter or no. So in 2024, we'll see if we get the adapters, first of all, and secondly, do people buy the cars now that they come with the adapter? And how much impact will Tesla's network popping open to all of the Fords and Chevys and hopefully Volkswagens and Hyundais and Kias, how big a deal will that make to uptick in people buying cars? If they can just use the Tesla network even with an adapter. I'm hoping that adapter comes soon, and that encourages people to buy again and use Tesla's network for charging to alleviate the concern that they can't go long distances. But more likely than not, we're waiting till 2025 before we get back on track sales-wise, because of the NACS transition. So what else made me lack enthusiasm? Well, basically everything GM has done for the past 2 years has made me lose enthusiasm. They keep announcing cars that then don't appear, and then when they do appear, it's in microscopic numbers, and that has continued for the past 2 years. 2023 was supposed to be the big breakout year. They were supposed to make 150,000 Ultium-based EVs, and they did not. I'll be surprised if at the end of the year they'll announce they made 15,000, a tenth of their goal. Unless you count the Bolt, which kept soldiering on and right here till the end of the year. And it just keeps getting worse and worse. And then when they announced, almost 6 months ago now, we're going to not do CarPlay and Android Auto in our EVs going forward. And I was like, that rang a lot of bells. And my initial reaction was, wow, their software stack must be really far behind. And I got replies to that sentiment that no, the software's fine. CarPlay is easy to implement, so that can't be what it is. Well, I still think it is, especially now that the Blazer EV has come out and been found to be completely buggy and almost useless as a car, that they had to the point that they had to do a stop sale on it last week. That's immature software. And not just the infotainment system, the whole car's architecture. Everything that talks to the CAN bus is that the stuff's not ready. And I thought it was very, very interesting that a couple weeks ago, I think the head of software for GM was the one being interviewed and explaining their lack of CarPlay and Android Auto integration as being for safety because those systems are flaky. Well, they're only flaky if your implementation of your interface to them is flaky. And so that was obviously very disingenuous. And I think it was very interesting that GM let their head of software engineering go out and say such a ridiculous thing, to the point that I believe they let him do that because they want to hang the problems on that person. And they should not have started selling Equinoxes with software that wasn't ready, but they did. And it just points to a very, very bad near-term future for the whole Ultium project at GM. Software is everything in these cars. And GM is apparently in a bad place right now. I hope they get out of it quickly. But if they thought that they could suddenly do this in-house themselves, and this is their first attempt to do that, we're probably in for a world of hurt with Ultium vehicles for the next 2 years. Not unlike what VW went through when the ID3 came out in 2019 or whatever, but maybe even worse. So anyway, here at the end of 2023, I'm trying to be optimistic again about what will happen going forward. I'm hoping this is a low point and that things will get better from here. I would certainly love to see more of a commitment from Volkswagen to keep moving forward in America. They've made lots of noise about new cars coming, but they all seem to be for Europe. I don't think they're going to sell the ID2 here in America, which is a shame. I hope they do. I hope it's a world car. But I think all their new cool stuff is just going to stay in Europe, and we're not going to get much here. I know that they've done a refresh for the 2024 ID4, bigger infotainment, updated software 4.0 or something. But are they going to give that to us who bought last year? Are we ever going to get an update to our cars? The jury's out on that. I certainly hope we do. So here's hoping 2024 has more to be happy about. I hope I get to spend a lot of time trying adapters on CCS cars and charging them on Tesla's network. And as we wait for the transition to complete.